Senator Okiya Omtatah, that is the Busia Senator, thank you so much for creating time to be with us, and congratulations on unveiling your 10-member committee that will help you steer the progress on your campaign bid. Would you paint a picture of what this means to you and for the people of Kenya briefly?
Well, basically, our country is at a crossroads. And so I've decided to step forward and see if I can be part of the solution. And to do that, I've decided to do it in a scientific manner, get some people to help me gauge the viability of my candidature, and if there are any challenges, to help me overcome those challenges so that I can have a campaign that will end up in victory. So basically, the exploratory committee is supposed to explore the landscape and do a viability test and see what are these challenges that are there to block my candidature, and if they can be overcome, we overcome them.
All right. The challenges that are playing out in the country, could this be the reason why you are seeking to bring this change as the president, or you have envisioned Okiya Omtatah presidency from the word go?
No, I'm just feeling that there's this challenge that we now have whereby there's need for a leadership that believes in the rule of law. If you look at it, since the day people said the constitution was going to be the solution, the new constitution, it came, but there's been reluctance to implement it. If you look at the question of public finances and how public finances are in a mess, you find that it is as a result of disregard for Chapter 12. Mm-hmm. Everything is laid out in the constitution, but we are not following it. So I want to come out and offer leadership that is based on constitutionalism and the rule of law, to fully implement the constitution and then rally the country towards an agenda, economic and social reforms that should convert our resource base, our resources, both the human and natural resources, into wealth. And the target I have is to see if we can come up and rally ourselves as Kenyans to a point whereby we can move our per capita income from about 1,900 USD to 30,000 or so USD. So basically that's the agenda I have, and I think when I look around, when you hear all these Adanis, all these scandals or whatever, we can never develop this country at that rate. Mm-hmm. We will need to go back and reset this country and make public office be fully for service, and those who want to become rich should go and look for enterprise elsewhere, mm-hmm. not in politics.
All right, and in your capability...
So that's what basically I have in mind, and I think it is something that needs to be done.
Great. In your capability, you have done so much towards, this business of resetting the country and making it better. The gentlemen that I have with me in studio appreciate that, and they say, indeed, you have done a good job. In your work of what some would consider as activism, others would say is a business of litigation and petitions at the level of courts. There's been allegations that there's always a team backing you up. There's always some people who sponsor you. How much different for this presidential bid? Would you say that there's someone that is behind you that perhaps would sponsor and would help you walk the journey, or it is out of your own volition?
Well, basically it's out of my own volition. I don't think a presidential bid is what somebody can send you into, mm-hmm. because it's an insurmountable, it's a fairly challenging endeavor. First of all, realize that at a personal level, I'll be relinquishing my grip on the Senate seat of Busia, so I've got that cost I have to pay, because in this country you cannot run for 2 seats. Mm. So I'll have, if I'm going for the presidency, automatically I have to relinquish my grip on the Senate of Busia come the 2027 elections. Mm-hmm. So I'll not be defending that seat at that election. Although I'll continue serving, I'll serve for my term. But I'll not be able to defend it. So these are the kind of considerations you make, and you have to leave your comfort zones and get out on a warpath. And this one, I'm doing it because I've got conviction that unless we intervene at this time, the current regime is likely to run us into hell. If you look at right from the Jubilee government to now the Kenya Kwanza, when you look at how they have behaved in questions of public finance, they have been a total disaster. For example, our public debt has been growing exponentially with nothing to show in corresponding development. So for me, I believe that I have an obligation to step forward and be the change I want to be. And there's no better position than to where I say the problem is in the presidency. Because if our president was to become the chief czar against corruption, that vice would be struck out of this country. If our president was to set out and implement the constitution, the promise of the constitution would be given to this country. Instead, they are very busy trying to change the law. They are trying to do this radical thing. They are trying to say the constitution is bad, it's limiting them. They want to play around with it. And that's basically where the problem is. So you need somebody who believes in total implementation of the constitution, the way I do, to implement the constitution, and then to set out economic reforms that will be able to institute proper fiscal discipline, and out of that proper fiscal discipline, unleash the money that is usually wasted, stolen, and squandered, to put it into social programs for education, for public transport, for food, and for health, public health.
All right.
You see people talking of universal health care, and they want to run it on the basis of premiums and not on the basis of main taxes being financing health.
Okay.
Yet we have signed the Abuja declaration that requires us to commit about 15% of our GDP, of our budget, not GDP, but of our budget to health. We are not doing that. Instead, we are getting the Adanis coming in and a similar chief and whatever being turned into scams that we cannot succeed. You find that the health sector is really now depending on the private sector. You can't run universal health care on the private sector. You must build your hospitals to provide adequate and accessible health care, so that then you can be able to get access to medication or to health care. So there are a number of things that need to be done, but the anchor is the Constitution and the rule of law. We must implement that Constitution 100% to realize its promise, and that's when we can be able to then move forward. Instead, we are getting the is coming in. When we sing the national anthem, we are singing the national anthem of Kenya. Right. Today, when you sing the national anthem, you are singing a national anthem of a country that is not Kenya.
Well,
that's how bad things are.
And of course, we're looking forward to see the change that you say or you propose to bring. I am certain that you have been amongst the Kenyans who've challenged early campaigns, of course, with previous regimes, with previous leadership and all that, especially because then early campaigns are considered to be, one of the deterrents to development. And so how will this then affect, your contribution or your work to the people of Busia? And basically, the question of devolution in Kenya at large, now that you're a senator.
No, I don't think I'm going to engage in what you call early campaigns. The issue is that where the country is sitting right now, we cannot let what is happening continue unchallenged. Number two, by setting this committee up, I'm conscious of the fact that I have a job to do as the senator of Busia, and I'm assuring you very soon you'll be seeing the consequences of some of the work I've been doing in Busia to make sure that the public funds are not stolen by rogue leaders. So there will be no contradiction. what we are not going to begin engaging in is early campaigns in the name of holding rallies, but preparing for an election, like to begin preparing for voters to register, beginning to prepare for people to take IDs, beginning to prepare, like we must campaign and make sure that the elections for president terminate at the constituency. We don't want any elections taken to bombers. The Constitution is clear in Article 138, Clause 2, that where more than one candidate is cleared to contest for the presidency, an election shall take place in each of the 290 constituencies. This idea that the election continues to take place in bombers has to stop. That's how we end up with presidential elections that are not conclusive. Even you saw in the US the other day, they have got states which are similar to our counties. You see the elections ended in the states. The formal announcement of the leader will be in January. But already we know that President Trump has been elected. Equally, for us, we want on election day to know who the winner is. Then we can wait for the IBC to make the declaration some 10 days later, performing some form of ritual, a formality. But the real election, the real contest must end in the constituency the way the Constitution provides for it.
All right.
This issue that came up that you have got a presidential returning officer created not even in the Act of Parliament, not in the Constitution, but in regulations, must be stopped. I know the courts have endorsed it, and that's why we must take it back to the streets and override what the courts have done by undermining the Constitution. In the minor Kiai case, the courts undermined the Constitution in the sense that they allowed that presidential thing to be there. Right now, you have had people saying they were talking about transmission of results being banned electronically and what have you. If we terminate these things at the constituency, this transmission of whatever will not be there.
All right.
Even TV 47 will call that election for us, will tell us this election has gone this way or that way, or there's no winner and therefore there will be a runoff. We don't have to wait for the IBC, because the IBC results that will be in each of the 290 constituencies can be taken up by anybody, added, tabulated, then you can do that, whether somebody has received the 25% threshold.
All right.
Or somebody has also received the 50+1 threshold, +1% threshold. And that is how, for me, we must get these elections conducted. So one of the major things we have to do, we have got the question of registration of IDs of new voters.
Okay.
There's the question of registration of voters, IDs for new voters, then registration of new voters, then determination of elections at the constituency. We don't want bombers to be there, and at the next elections, there will be no bombers and there will be no Chebukatis of this world.
Interesting.
Playing games with the minds of Kenyans.
Interesting, and I want
That's
us
how we're
to
going to have it, and we will have the election called on election day by the media.
All right, fair enough. I want us to treat this one. We'll be having another session with you so we get into the details and the nitty-gritty details of this. But allow us to treat
so it
the
will
next
not be a campaign. I wanted to clarify, it will not be a campaign, but you need to prepare for a proper campaign.
Okay. All right. The other questions, I want us to treat them as quick fire questions. Do you see yourself gaining, momentum and, that love from the people of Kenya? And number two, are we foreseeing a scenario where you're going to have alliances? Because, ours has been more of, an alliances kind of approach to elections and all that. Are you intending to go it alone all the way, or we will see you forming alliances with the likes of, I don't want to give you names, but I could mention maybe Kalonzo Musyoka, who's out there, of course, declaring
But
himself.
I think where I am right now is beginning. We want to build a vehicle with like-minded people.
Yeah.
A vehicle that can win the elections without an alliance. That's what we want to go out for. But there's also real politics when it gets there.
Yeah.
But it will have to be an alliance of ideas, not an alliance of individuals. If we cannot get an alliance of ideas, we shall go alone. But if we get an alliance of ideas, then whoever is better, once the ideas have been put on the table, whoever is better to implement those ideas will be given the mantle. We will not make an alliance just for the sake of winning the presidency.
All right.
The presidency must be a clearly cut agenda. So those who agree with that agenda and the program that we are building, we shall be able to form alliances with them. Because our program is total implementation of the Constitution, rule of law, and the creation, the total fiscal discipline according to Chapter 12 of the Constitution. And our focus in implementing the Constitution, we are going to look at our focus is Chapter 10, Article 10 of the Constitution. We are looking at Chapter 4 on the Bill of Rights. We are looking at Chapter 6 on integrity and leadership. We are looking at Chapter 7 on the elections. And we are looking at Chapter 12 on public finances. Those are the key focuses we are going to have when we look at implementing the Constitution, because we believe, me and my team, that if those are implemented, the Republic of Kenya will be restored and will stop being something that we cannot identify.
All right. What are the chances of President William Ruto in 2027, bearing in mind that he enjoys incumbency, and as well just looking at the kind of anger that you say Kenyans have towards him, and also speak to the fact that this is an expensive bid. You say that money is not really much of a problem. How can you convince us that that is the case?
You know, we are not selling, we are not buying votes. We are rallying behind Kenyans to achieve a destination, to arrive at a destination they desire. The people go out to buy votes, and some of this money, you are being told, is money that is used to corrupt election officials and things like those. We are going to get Kenyans to say that the elections are going to terminate at the constituency. We are going to have campaigners who are running for seats in the various constituencies. I've had my own experience when I ran for the senatorial seat in Busia. I did not have money and people dismissed me. I ran against people who had a lot of money. But I was able to do a civic education campaign, an information campaign that informed the people, and they came out and they gave me their votes. I even got votes from areas I had never reached. That's the kind of thing I want to replicate on the national scale, to let people understand the promise of the Constitution and rally them to go and get that promise for themselves. It's not a question of money. And even those who are boasting about money, they will have to tell us where that money is coming from.
Okay.
It's not just a question of people floating money. These are people who steal from the public and they come to confuse the public. So if you have a lot of money, for heaven's sake, you'll have to tell us where you have gotten that money from.
Okay.
Otherwise, it will not be business. It will not be business as usual.
All right. And I know we asked what are the chances of President William Ruto, but allow me to also allow the gentleman here. We at least, change.
I think President Ruto should worry about his chances. I will not worry about his chances for him.
Okay, fair enough, Senator. Two questions from the gentlemen in studio who are Kenyans as well, and my guests tonight. They have a question, at least each for you. 30 seconds. Is there anything you would want to tell him or perhaps ask him?
Yes.
Yes.
We'll begin with you, yes.
Yeah, definitely. So, Senator, you've been quite active in terms of finances, and, we saw you in Finance Bill 2024, Finance Act 2023 at the Supreme Court. So what is your plan to raise revenue? Because any budget, any government will need a budget, and that budget needs to be financed. And one of the sources, of course, is taxes. So what's your approach to that?
My approach to that is that taxation is a necessary evil and is allowed in the Constitution, because government must raise money to function. But we must have balanced budgets. You remember, I began engaging the finance bill in 2018, not 2023, 2018. There was this time when you could have, around budget time, goods to disappear from markets. Then once the budget is read, they come back with new and higher prices. I went to court and fought that thing because I argued that you cannot tax Kenyans without the approval of their representatives. The courts upheld that, and that's what resulted in the amendment of the Public Finance Management Act to introduce Section 39A, which then talks about the finance bill and how it's supposed to be processed through Parliament. So then going ahead, I've been fighting that taxation, we must have a budget that shows us both the revenue estimates and also the expenditure estimates. There's no point having a budget that only discloses expenditure estimates and no revenue estimates. So I want to do a balanced budget. I also want to cut out this borrowing outside the budget. Like recently I've been seeing the president receiving a lot of loans from the IMF. They are not in the budget, they are nowhere, and that's not good. So the issue really is not so much on the side of taxation, but more so on the side of what those taxes are intended for. So we want to get budgets that are not padded with corruption. We want to get budgets that are within our means, and we want to have all the borrowings that the government engages in to be in the Appropriations Act. This is of domestic borrowing. You borrow domestically when you are not, with nothing attached to what you are borrowing to do, has to stop. So fiscal discipline for me is very, very important. But as a way of raising revenue, taxation remains the ultimate tool that any government has. But the taxation must be responsible.
Right.
We're not going to tax people to a point of reducing the middle poverty. And also taxes are not going to be the means for developing the country. We must allow enterprise and innovation and come up with incentives that allow Kenyans to save. It's only by Kenyans saving and creating a capital base that we shall be able to invest and develop this country. That's why one of the things we want to do is to have a sovereign fund. When you go to Article 201, Clause C, it requires the budget, when you spend the budget and whatever, to think about future generations. That anticipates a sovereign fund whereby at least we save a percentage of our revenue, be it from the budget or from the mineral resources, to be able to secure something for the future. And if possible, build this fund to a point whereby Kenya can become a net lender and not a borrower.
Fair enough, Senator. Fair
so
enough.
We must avoid predatory loans. Yes.
These ones are tax experts. I hope they are convinced with that. But like we say, the conversation continues. That is Alex Kanyi, tax expert, CDH Kenya. We also have Kiplimo Kigen, Head of Policy Research and Advocacy. That is KNCC, Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Quick question, and Senator, let's make the response tight.
Thank you, Linda. Mhesh, congratulations on launching of the bid. I think Kenya's private sector would be interested to know what you'd have in store.
Thank you very much, Ndugu. I hope you'll support me.
Hopefully, definitely. Mhesh, Kenya's private sector is interested to see what your plan is in as far as business competitiveness is concerned. Our competitiveness in export, in production, in attraction of investment, competitiveness in general.
Yes, and what we are doing is that we are going to reach out to your sector to help us develop a coherent policy framework that we need to implement on day one to unlock the potential that Kenya has as a manufacturing or a productive economy. So we want to look at those things, including banking, whether the laws governing our banking are adequate for production or not. We have the costs of energy. What kind of tax regimes do we have? Do we have a tax regime that is geared towards production, or do we have a tax regime that is geared towards stifling production? So we need to do that, and we're going to sit down. And one of the things this committee have done is to sit down with groups like yours and be able to develop a coherent policies. We want to develop a policy, an ideological and policy framework. But ultimately, what you sing in the national anthem is our target. That productive land, that land that is prosperous, that land that is ruled by law, where justice is the defender of everybody, that is our ultimate destination. And enterprise for us is the key thing. But also, we fully realize that in a political economy, the primary force is not the market, but political action. Because that political action can also help unlock the market. There may be decisions the market requires to be able to move forward, our producers and all that. So we will get together with you people and develop a policy framework and move forward. So at the end of the day, being president is like being a captain of a big ship. So we want to build a proper vehicle that can take Kenya out of what we are. And our target of moving the economy from per capita of 1,900 USD to 30,000 USD is fully anchored on the backs of our entrepreneurial sector.
All right.
The manufacturing sector, the productive sector. But there's also the extractive sector, the minerals in this country. The extractive sector must also play its role, and we must come up with proper taxes on that sector and regularize that sector, do a complete resource map of the country, and then see how we can tap those resources to convert them into wealth in the pockets of Kenyans. That's what we must do.
Senator, I think we close it at that point, lest someone rushes to court and they say that the senator has already begun his campaigns. Asante sana, Busia Senator Okiya Omtatah, who's launched his presidential bid as well as unveiled his secretariat and the committee, 10-member committee that will oversee this bid. Asante sana, we're looking forward to more engagements in relation to just what then we need to do as a country.